Beijing is pushing a unique financial campaign urging Chinese citizens and businesses to start using digital currency across the nation. And once that's done, it has plans to promote that digital currency worldwide, eventually looking to achieve international use. But why go through all the trouble? It may be part of Beijing's long game to challenge the US dollar as the most used in the world.
I believe that the adoption of their central bank digital currency is cancerous to the West. I think legislators and/or the Fed should simply outlaw the ownership of the Chinese central bank digital currency in America.
But China's digital yuan boasts a few key differences from other currencies, like being issued by a state-controlled central bank. But what could a widespread transition to financial cyberspace mean for Chinese society? Tune into this week's special report to find out more. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. More and more transactions are happening digitally, meaning more credit card swipes and online orders with fewer cash payments. And while retailers and other businesses in many nations are adapting, Beijing is taking it a step further. The Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, is pushing a unique initiative, urging its citizens and businesses to switch from physical money to digital money. State-run media Global Times says China's digital yuan transactions have already reached over 60 billion yuan, or nearly $10 billion. At the same time, some 140 million digital wallets have been opened in the country. That's enough for 1 out of every 10 Chinese citizens. In this week's special report, we take a closer look at China's digital currency and some of the points of concern surrounding its growth. The digital yuan that's being rolled out functions exactly like physical banknotes or coins. And the currency differs from other types of digital payments, like PayPal, for example. The digital yuan does not need to be linked to the user's bank account. Instead, it's stored in a virtual wallet app on the user's phone. A transaction between two people is completed just by touching their phones together. Put simply, this currency is physical money, but stored on smartphones. The digital yuan works differently than cryptocurrency too. Using cryptocurrencies can offer a level of privacy as they lean toward decentralization, meaning they function outside the control of a central authority. But China's digital currency is the opposite. It leans towards the centralization of power. The digital yuan will be issued by China's central bank, the People's Bank of China. This means the digital money can be tracked by the Chinese central bank. Media outlet Forbes said the digital yuan would be one of the most aggressive consolidations of economic power the world has seen in the 21st century. But it doesn't stop there. It seems China has even bigger plans for its digital currency. Chinese state-owned outlet CGTN says the digital yuan, also known as the RMB, also promotes the internationalization of Chinese currency. CGTN explains that Beijing may be pushing the digital yuan toward competing against the US dollar as the currency for international trade.
Currently, cross-border RMB settlement is highly dependent on the U.S. SWIFT system. But these cross-border payment and banking systems have been weaponized by the United States to impose financial sanctions on multiple parties. The digital RMB provides an independent alternative for cross-border payments.
Now that we know what it is, let's look at what would happen if Beijing successfully boosted the digital yuan to widespread use, or even, as some experts fear, push it to a level where nearly all transactions rely on it, versus physical money. As for the most immediate result, in China, the privacy offered by cash transactions would largely become a thing of the past. Instead, the movement of every penny that's spent digitally could be tracked and monitored by the Chinese state. Milton Israti is the chief economist of Vested, a U.S.-based financial communications agency. Here's what he had to say about China's digital yuan.
I think China wants a digital yuan because they want to get rid of paper currency in China, because paper currency is the only way people can deal and not be monitored by the authorities. So a digital currency is mostly about surveillance. Effectively, every transaction that occurs is on the government's computers.
Because of the digital yuan's centralized nature, China's state-controlled central banks can see the exact amount of money any user has in their wallet at any given time. And since every transaction is fully traceable, the Chinese state will eventually build a complete profile of its citizens' purchasing habits, down to the most minute detail, like what brand of toothpaste someone buys or the kind of prescription medication a user needs. What's more, because the digital currency is issued by the state bank, it maintains full control over the funds. That gives the bank the ability to freeze, limit, or seize any user's funds. Authorities would have complete supervision over a person's wallet, giving the Chinese regime unprecedented control over any individual or entity. It would become that much easier for Beijing to crack down on dissidents. Think human rights advocates, pro-democracy Hong Kongers, or members of the Uyghur ethnic minority. Authorities could simply flip a switch and halt a person's ability to make transactions. Or go a step further and completely wipe out a person's savings, removing those funds from their wallets. If that wasn't enough, these issues not only spark concerns for Chinese citizens, but also for foreign businesses operating in China. With the digital yuan fully implemented, the regime could boycott a foreign company in China even more thoroughly. For one, authorities could disable all digital wallets from making transactions with a given company, or they could levy fines on anyone who purchases from that company. But the plan stretches beyond China's borders. Now, what about foreign nationals living or visiting China? Would they be required to use the digital yuan as well? Per state outlet CGTN, China is working to push the digital yuan onto the international stage.
Individuals will be able to use it to make payments abroad. International businesses involved in China's import and export sectors can also do transactions in the digital yuan.
To support that goal, China is also designing its digital currency to be capable of bypassing a would-be obstacle, the global financial transaction system called SWIFT. That's the network that enables financial institutions worldwide to send and receive transaction information. When a country's banks are cut off from SWIFT, that nation can't pay for imports and can't receive payment for exports, a situation that could easily turn financially crippling. And the U.S. has some influence over the system. In 2018, Washington got SWIFT to kick Iran from the network. That's among the reasons China is designing its digital currency to be able to operate outside SWIFT.
And I think today, China has such a dependency on the US dollar and the SWIFT system. And as they think about next year and the years to come, they're rolling out their central bank digital currency. They're trying to lessen their dependence on dollars. If their dollar capacity was removed from them overnight, if we took them off the SWIFT system, their entire economy would collapse literally overnight.
According to the most recent data from the Bank for International Settlements, the US dollar dominates all other currencies. The dollar accounts for 88% of all international foreign exchange trades, whereas the Chinese yuan only accounts for 4%. But China's central bank digital currency, or CBDC, seeks to increase that percentage. That's the digital yuan we've been talking about.
If their rollout of the CBDC is successful, and they get everyone that engages in trade with China to settle in their CBDC, and everyone that invests in China to settle in their CBDC, I believe their ownership of the global currency settlement world could go from 0 to as high as 15%, basically in an overnight move. Now, that doesn't mean that the hegemonic position of the US dollar has changed and China's got it. That just means we go from mid-80s, maybe down to 70. The US dollar will still reign supreme.
So what would a widely used or even fully utilized digital yuan mean for the rest of the world? Bass says the threat of being taken off the SWIFT system and dependency on the US dollar are some factors currently keeping the communist regime in check. But if Beijing could circumvent them, it would likely ramp up its aggression on the human rights front, the military front, and the economic front.
But if they're successful in moving away from dollar dependency, which is what they're moving to their CBDC is, their militaristic belligerence can then advance unabated around the world. I believe we need to outlaw their new central bank digital currency in the West.
Analysts and economists explain that digitalization of the yuan in itself won't make it a rival for the dollar. But if more countries agree to use it, it could dull the effect of U.S. sanctions on China. Josh Lipsky, a former staff member at the International Monetary Fund, has said anything that threatens the dollar is a national security issue, adding that this threatens the dollar over the long term. Kyle Bass seems to agree. He says China's central bank digital currency is cancerous to the West.